Shalom, welcome back. We are picking up in the Rock of a Sure Foundation. We're up to Clement's letter to James the Just. And this is a letter announcing the death, the martyrdom of Peter. And it goes into a few other things. Again, this is the introduction to the book usually known as the Clementine Homilies, but the author Clement named the book. He named the book the popular Sermons of Peter. So it's my theory, my understanding that the reason it's usually titled as the Clementine Homilies is because they don't want you to read it. And if you knew it was the Sermons of Peter, you might actually pick up the book and read it, but the title Clementine Homilies doesn't sound very interesting. It doesn't sound like something that most people would be eager to read. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with the letter. Clement to James, the master's brother, and the bishops of bishops, who rules Jerusalem, the holy church of the Hebrews, and the churches everywhere excellently founded by the providence of Yahweh, with the elders and deacons and the rest of the brethren, peace be always. Be it known to you, my master, that Simon, who for the sake of the true faith and the most sure foundation of his doctrine was set apart to be the foundation of the church, and for this end was by Yeshua himself with his truthful mouth named Peter, the first fruits of our Master, the first of the apostles, to whom first the Father revealed the Son, whom the Messiah with good reason blessed, the called and elect and associate at table, and in the journeyings of Messiah, the excellent and approved disciple, who, as being fittest of all, was commanded to enlighten the darker part of the world, namely the West, and was enabled to accomplish it. And to what extent do I lengthen my discourse, not wishing to indicate what is sad, yet of necessity, though reluctantly, I must tell you, he himself, by reason of his immense love toward men, having come as far as Rome, clearly and publicly testifying, in opposition to the wicked one who withstood him, that there is to be a good king over all the world, while saving men by his Yahweh-inspired doctrine, himself, by violence, exchanged this present existence for life. This is something that has impacted me quite a bit, is the way that Clement describes the death of Peter. He exchanged this present existence for life. He didn't die, he went into life. It's like Clement is saying that this present existence is not life. It's an imitation of life, and the true life begins after you die to this world and resurrect in the next. In opposition to the wicked one who withstood him, is that Satan, or is the wicked one a human being? Who else do we know that went to Rome at about the same time that Peter did? Peter, most people believe he died in the early 60s Common Era. So who else? Who else would have been in Rome about that time? But about that time, when he was about to die, the brethren, being assembled together, he suddenly seized my hand and rose up and said in the presence of the church, Hear me, brethren and fellow servants, since I have been taught by the master and teacher, Yeshua the Messiah, whose apostle I am, the day of my death is approaching. I lay hands upon this Clement as your bishop, and to him I entrust my chair of discourse, even to him who has journeyed with me from the beginning to the end, and thus has heard all my homilies, who, in a word, having had a share in all my trials, has been found steadfast in the faith, whom I have found, above all others, pious, philanthropic, pure, learned, and chaste, good and upright, large-hearted, and striving generously to bear the ingratitude of some of the catechumens. Wherefore I communicate to him the power of binding and loosing, so that with respect to everything which he shall ordain in the earth, it shall be decreed in the heavens. For he shall bind what ought to be bound, and loose what ought to be loosed, knowing the role of the church. Therefore hear him, as knowing that he who grieves the president of the truth sins against Messiah, and offends the Father of all. Wherefore he shall not live, and therefore it becomes him who presides to hold the place of a physician, and not to cherish the rage of an irrational beast. So this is essentially, Peter declaring that Clement is the Bishop of Rome. I find it interesting that the Catholic Church, claims to gain their authority through Simon Peter, but the first bishop of the Catholic Church was Linus. So my theory is that there were two churches operating within Rome. There was the church founded by Paul there, which was operated by Linus. It's my understanding that the Catholic Church says that Paul ordained Linus as bishop. And then you had a second church, the Nazarene Church in Rome, which was founded by Peter and then passed on to Clement. Now, how we could go about proving that is kind of difficult. The waters are kind of muddied. Supposedly, according to the Catholic Church, I think Clement was like the third bishop of Rome. And the office of the Bishop of Rome eventually, of course, became known as the Pope. So the Pope is really just the Bishop of Rome. He's not some... And that position was not originally meant to be the head of the church. As you can see, the head of the church was supposed to be James. And James's position, which was passed on to the family of Yeshua, Bishop of Bishops. So I think we were on chapter 3. While he thus spoke, I knelt to him and entreated him, declining the honor and the authority of the chair. But he answered, Concerning this matter, do not ask me, for it has seemed to me to be good that thus it be, and all the more if you decline it. For this chair has not need of a presumptuous man, ambitious in occupying it, but of the one pious in conduct and deeply skilled in the word. But show me a better than yourself, who has traveled more with me, and has heard more of my discourses, and has learned better than the regulations of the church, and I shall not force you to do well against your will, but it will not be in your power to show me your superior, for you are the choice firstfruits of the multitudes saved through me. However, consider this further, that if you do not undertake the administration of the church through fear of the danger of sin, you may be sure that you sin more when you have it in your power to help the godly who are, as it were, at sea and in danger, and will not do so, providing only for your own interest and not for the common advantage of all. But that it behooves you altogether to undertake the danger, while I do not cease to ask it of you for the help of all, you well understand. The sooner, therefore, you consent, so much the sooner you will relieve me from anxiety. But I myself also, O Clement, know the griefs and anxiety and dangers and reproaches that are appointed you from the uninstructed multitudes. And these you will be able to bear nobly, looking to the great reward of patience bestowed on you by Yahweh. But also consider this fairly with me, when has Messiah need of your aid? Now when the wicked one has sworn war against his bride, or in the time to come when he shall reign victorious, having no need for further help. Is it not evident that anyone who has even the least understanding that it is now? Therefore, with all good will, hasten in the time of the present necessity to do battle on the side of this good king, whose character it is to give great rewards after victory. Therefore take the oversight gladly, and all the more in good time, because you have learned from me the administration of the church, for the safety of the brethren who have taken refuge with us. However, I wish in the presence of all to remind you, for the sake of all, of the things belonging to the administration. It becomes you, living without reproach, with the greatest earnestness, to shake off all the cares of life, being neither a surety nor an advocate nor involved in any other secular business, for Messiah does not wish to appoint you either as a judge or an arbitrator in business or a negotiator of the secular affairs of the present life, lest being confined to the present cares of men, you shall not have leisure by the word of truth to separate the good among men from the bad. But let the disciples perform these offices to one another, and not withdraw you from the discourses which are able to save. For as it is wicked for you to undertake secular cares, and to omit the doing of what you have been commanded to do, so it is sin for every layman if they do not stand by one another even in secular necessities. And if all do not understand to take order, that you be without care in respect of the things in which you ought to be. Let them learn from the deacons that you may have the care of the church always, in order both to your administrating it well and to your holding forth the words of truth. Now, if you are occupied with secular cares, you should deceive both yourself and your hearers. For not being able on account of occupation to point out the things that are advantageous, both you should be punished as not having taught what was profitable, and they, not having learned, should perish by reason of ignorance. Wherefore do you indeed preside over them without occupation, so as to send forth seasonably the words that are able to save them, and so let them listen to you, knowing that whatever the ambassador of the truth shall bind upon the earth is bound also in heaven, and what he shall loose is loosed. But you shall bind what ought to be bound, and loose what ought to be loose. And these, and such like, are the things that relate to you as president. And with respect to the presbyters, take these instructions. Above all things, let them join in the young early in marriage, anticipating the entanglements of youthful lusts. But neither let them neglect the marriage of those who are already old, for lust is vigorous even in some old men. Lest therefore fornication find a place among you, and bring upon you a very pestilence like. Take precaution and search, lest at any time the fire of adultery be secretly kindled among you. For adultery is a very terrible thing, even such that it holds the second place in respect of punishment, the first being assigned to those who are in error, even though they be chaste. Wherefore do you, as elders of the church, exercise the spouse of Messiah to chastity. By the spouse I mean the body of the church. For if she be apprehended to be chaste by her royal bridegroom, she shall obtain the greatest honor, and you, as wedding guest, shall receive great commendation. But if she be caught having sinned, she herself indeed shall be cast out, and you shall suffer punishment, if at any time her sin has been through your negligence. Something tells me when, if Yeshua were to return today, he would not be pleased with the condition of the church with regards to this matter. Wherefore, above all things, be careful about chastity. For fornication has been marked out as a bitter thing in the estimation of Yahweh, but there are many forms of fornication, as also Clement himself will explain to you. The first is adultery, that a man shall not enjoy his own wife alone, or a woman not enjoy her own husband alone. If anyone be chaste, he is able also to be philanthropic, on account of which he shall obtain eternal mercy. For as adultery is a great evil, so philanthropy is the greatest good. Wherefore, love all your brethren with grave and compassionate eyes, performing to orphans the part of parents, to widows that of husbands, affording them sustenance with all kindness, arranging marriages for those who are in their prime, and for those who are without a profession, that the means and necessities support through employment, giving work to the artificer and alms to the incapable. But I know that you will do these things if you fix love into your minds, and for its entrance there's one only fit means, namely the common partaking of salt. Wherefore, see to it that you be frequently one another's guests, as you are able, that you may not fail of it, for it is the cause of well-doing, and well-doing of salvation. Therefore all of you present, Therefore all of you present your provisions in common to all your brethren in Yahweh, knowing that giving temporal things you shall receive eternal things. Much more feed the hungry, and give drink to the thirsty, and clothing to the naked. Visit the sick, showing yourselves to those who are in prison, and help them as you are able, and receive strangers into your houses with all alacrity. However, not to speak in detail, philanthropy will teach you to do everything that is good, and as misanthropy suggests ill-doing to those who will not be saved. Let the brethren who have causes to be settled not be judged by the secular authorities, but let them by all means be reconciled by the elders of the church, yielding ready obedience to them. Moreover, also flee avarice, inasmuch as it is able, under pretext of temporal gain, to deprive you of eternal blessings. Carefully keep your balances, your measures, your weights, and the things belonging to your trade honest. Be faithful with respect to your trusts. Moreover, you will persevere in doing these things, and things similar to these, until the end. If you have in your hearts an irreducible remembrance of the judgment that is from Yahweh. For who would sin, being persuaded that at the end of life there is a judgment appointed of the just God, who only now is long-suffering and good, that the good may in future enjoy forever unspeakable blessings, but the sinners, being found as evil, shall obtain an eternity of unspeakable punishment. And indeed, that these things are so, it would be reasonable to doubt, were it not that the prophet of truth has said and sworn that it shall be. Wherefore, being disciples of the true prophet, laying aside double-mindedness, from which comes ill-doing, eagerly undertake well-doing. If any of you doubt concerning the things which I have said are to be, let him confess it without shame, if he cares for his own soul, and he shall be satisfied by the president. But if he has believed rightly, let his conversation be with confidence, as fleeing from the great fire of condemnation and entering into the eternal good kingdom of Yahweh. Moreover, let the deacons of the church, going about with intelligence, be as eyes to the bishop, carefully inquiring into the doings of each member of the church, ascertaining who is about to sin, in order that, being arrested with admonition by the president, he may by chance not accomplish the sin. Let them check the Man, can you imagine if the deacons in the church would report you to the pastor or whoever the head of the church is, the bishop, if they thought you were going to commit a sin? Like the way the church is today, they don't even care. Like, you could be openly engrossed in sin and they just would pretend like they don't know. Let them check the disorderly, that they may not refrain from assembling to hear the discourses, so that they may be able to counteract by the word of truth those anxieties that fall upon the heart from every side, by means of worldly casualties and evil communications. For if they long remain fallow, they become fuel for the fire. And let them learn who are suffering under bodily disease, and let them bring them to the notice of the multitude who do not know of them, that they may visit them and supply their wants according to the judgment of the president. Yea, though they do this without knowledge, they do nothing amiss. These things then, and things like these, let the deacons attend to. Let the catechist instruct, being first instructed, for it is a work relating to the souls of men, for the teacher of the word must accommodate himself to the various judgments of the learners. The catechist must therefore be learned and without fault, of much experience, and approved, as you will know that Clement is, who is to be your instructor after me. For if it were too much for me now to go into details, however, if you be of one mind, you shall be able to reach the haven of rest, which is the peaceful city of the great King. For the whole business of the church is like unto a great ship, bearing through a violent storm men who are of many places, and who desire to inhabit the city of the good kingdom. Let therefore Yahweh be your shipmaster, and let the pilot be likened to Messiah, the mate to the bishop, and the sailors to the deacons, the midshipmen to the catechist, the multitude of the brethren to the passengers, to the world to the sea, the foul winds to temptations, persecutions, and dangers, and all manner of afflictions to the waves, the land winds and their squalls, to the discourses of deceivers and false prophets. the promontories and rugged rocks, to the judges in high places threatening terrible things, the meetings of two seas and the wind and the wild places, to unreasonable men and those who doubted the promises of truth. Let hypocrites be regarded as like to pirates. Moreover, account the strong whirlpool and the Tartarian Charybdis and murderous wrecks and deadly foundings to the naught but sins. In order, therefore, that sailing with a fair wind you may safely reach the haven of the hoped-for city, pray so as to be heard, but prayers become audible by good deeds. So if you want to get your prayers answered, that's how you do it. Prayers become audible by good deeds. Let therefore the passengers remain quiet, sitting in their own places, lest by disorder they occasion rolling or careening. Let the midshipmen give heed to the fare. Let the deacons neglect nothing with which they are entrusted. Let the presbyters, like sailors, studiously arrange what is needful for each one. Let the bishop, as the mate, wakefully ponder the words of the pilot alone. Let Messiah, even the Savior, be loved as a pilot, and alone believed in the matters which he speaks, and let all pray to Yahweh for a prosperous voyage. Let those sailing expect every tribulation, as traveling over a great and troubled sea. The world sometimes indeed disheartened, persecuted, dispersed, hungry, thirsty, naked, hemmed in, and again sometimes united, congregated, at rest, but also seasick, giddy, vomiting, that is, confessing sins, like disease producing bile. I mean the sins proceeding from bitterness, and the evils accumulated from disorderly lust, and the confession of which, as by vomiting you are relieved of your disease, attaining healthful safety by means of carefulness. But know all of you that the bishop labors more than you all, because each of you suffers his own affliction. But he is his own, and that of everyone. Wherefore, O Clement, preside as helper to everyone according to your ability, being careful of the cares of all. Whence I know that in your undertaking the administration, I do not confer, but receive a favor. But take courage and bear it generously, as knowing that Yahweh will recompense you when you enter the haven of rest, the greatest of blessings, a reward that cannot be taken from you, a proportion as you have undertaken more labor for the safety of all. So that if many of the brethren should hate you on account of your lofty justice, their hatred shall nothing hurt you, but the love of the just God shall greatly benefit you. Therefore endeavor to shake off the praise that arises from injustice, and to attain the profitable praise that is from Messiah, on account of just administration. Having said this, and more than this, he looked again upon the multitude and said, And you also, my beloved brethren and fellow servants, be subject to the president of the truth in all things, knowing this, that he who grieves him has not received Messiah, with whose chair he has been entrusted, and he who has not received Messiah shall be regarded as having despised the Father. Wherefore he shall be cast out of the good kingdom. On this account endeavor to come to all the assemblies, lest as deserters you incur the charge of sin throughout the disheartening of your captain. Wherefore all of you think before all else of the things that relate to him, knowing this, that the wicked one, being more hostile on account of every one of you, wars against him alone. Do you therefore strive to live in affection toward him, and in kindliness toward one another, and to obey him, in order that both he may be comforted and you may be saved. He who has not received the Messiah shall be regarded as having despised the Father. So there's a group of people out there that are traditionally and widely regarded as God's chosen people. Have they received the Messiah? The vast majority have not. So they should be regarded as despising the Father. John says something very similar. He says you can't have the Father if you don't have the Son. And I think I think there's a lot of pastors out there that are really speaking blasphemously to refer to those people as God's chosen people. But some things also you ought of yourself to consider on account of his not being able to speak openly by reason of the plots, such as, if he be hostile to anyone, do not wait for his speaking, and do not take part with that man, but prudently follow the bishop's will, being enemies to those to whom he is an enemy, and not conversing with those to whom he does not converse, in order that everyone, desiring to have you all as his friends, may be reconciled to him and be saved, listening to his discourse. But if anyone remain a friend of those to whom he is an enemy, and speak to those with whom he does not converse, he also himself is one of those who would waste the church. For being with you in body, but not with you in judgment, he is against you, and is much worse than the open enemies from without, since with seeming friendship he disperses those who are within. Having thus spoken, he laid his hands upon me in the presence of all, and compelled me to sit in his own chair. And when I was seated, he immediately said to me, I entreat you, in the presence of all the brethren here, that whensoever I depart from this life, as I depart, I must, you send to James, the brother of the Master, a brief account of your reasonings from your boyhood, and how from the beginning until now you have journeyed with me, hearing the discourses preached by me in every city, and seeing my deeds. And then at the end you will not fail to inform him of the manner of my death, as I've said before. For that event will not grieve him very much when he knows that I piously went through what it behooved me to suffer. And he will get the greatest comfort when he learns that not an unlearned man, or one ignorant of life-giving words, or knowing the rule of the church, shall be entrusted with the chair of the teacher after me. For the discourse of a deceiver destroys the souls of the multitudes who hear. Whence I, my master James, having promised as I was ordered, having not failed to write in books by chapters the greatest part of his discourses in every city, which have been already written to you and sent by himself as for a token. And thus I dispatched them to you, inscribing them Clement's epitome of the popular sermons of Peter. However, I shall begin to set them forth as I was ordered. So, next is the Clementine homilies, or Clement's epitome of the popular sermons of Peter. So that's our next book that we'll be getting into. It's pretty much just as long as the Nazarene Acts. It's in 20 books instead of 10, I believe, and it's similar to the Nazarene Acts. I mean, it's like comparing the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke. They're similar, but they're different. I guess that's it. Like I said, this is the title that Clement gave them, and so that's why that's the title that I used when I put them in this book. And from what I understand with this last paragraph, I think what he is saying is that he's already sent to James through Peter, like Peter had sent Peter's teachings already, and so this is a second copy of them. So that may explain why there's two different books. There's the recognitions and the homilies. That may be the recognitions, also known as the Nazarene Acts, were this first copy, which has already been written to you and sent by Peter, and then after the death of Peter, Clement had rewritten them and sent them as what we have now known as the Clementine homilies. So that's one possible explanation for why there's two works that are very similar, but also somewhat different. So anyway, I think that's enough for now, and next time we'll be picking it up in the popular sermons of Peter. Shalom.